Hello whisky fans and malt mates, welcome to the Whisky Bothy, old, rustic and just like myself actually. I'm Ralphie the host here. I'm a whisky drinker, slightly grumpy at times, but generally always kind of thoughtful and, be rest assured, opinionated. I know my own opinion on whisky and other quality spirits. So I'm going to give you my opinion on this. This is a brand of Scotch single malt whisky, which I'm reviewing for the first time. And I must say, you can see by the fill level of it in the bottle, I've been really enjoying this. One thing that does concern me is the cork though, the stopper. If you have a look at the stopper, it looks like a hallucinogenic mushroom or something you would see in an OnlyFans video. It's just, the stopper, as far as I'm concerned, looks slightly strange. But in the meantime, welcome to my first review of Lag single malt whisky from the Isle of Arran. So it's a West Coast island distillery, and it's the second distillery in the Isle of Arran, with the Lochranza distillery being up in the north and very well established now, producing Isle of Arran whisky, the 10-year-old, which remains one of the most consistent, reliable and recommended single malts that you can possibly buy. But the 10-year-old Isle of Arran is not peated. Lag is completely peated. It's a small distillery. It was basically opened its doors in 2019, so it's coming into its 7th year at the moment, so still a young distillery. But I was really curious to try it and review it and just give an opinion of it, so as that there is an opinion out there. Now, I have to warn you before we go any further that it's not all good news, right? But let's start with the good news, and that is the whisky itself. For a relatively light number of years in the cask, so what, 6 years in the cask? This has been primarily bourbon cask matured and then finished for 6 months in ex-Palo Cortado casks. And I have to say, for starters, that the casks are really good quality, and they've had a very positive impact on this heavily peated whisky. It is delightful, it is original, it is authentic, it doesn't taste like other peated whiskies, and I can see that there's a great potential in the future for Lag Distillery. I was kind of aware of this when I was looking online at some pictures of the still room, and I saw that the wash still in particular is a real fat-bodied, fat-necked still, which is ideal for less reflux during distillation. Which is the circulation of the vapour spirit, which means that you get the heavier notes going over into the line arm and into the cooling. So with the shape and size of the stills, I would expect a heavier, weightier, more intensely peated whisky, and I'm certainly not disappointed. It doesn't have an age statement, but it's about 6 years old. It states on the label non-chill filtered natural colour, which is very reassuring to see, and it's been bottled at 56.2%. And in my opinion, this is arguably the best version of Lag available at the moment, because I have tasted one of the other versions called Corrycravie at 55%, and it was pleasant, but it didn't have the fullness of maturation that this version has at this age. Now, there are 4 versions of Lag out there at the moment, and I'm just going to let this this dram just sit and gently oxidise a little bit before I nose it and taste it. Tell you a little bit more about where Lag is at the moment as a distillery. There's 4 versions out there. There's the inaugural, which is bottled at 50%. And at the moment it's in discount. You can save £15 at some of the retailers. And it's worth noting that. I think that's quite a significant situation, that here we are in February and there's significant discounts on an inaugural bottling. Suggests that there was probably too many bottled as an inaugural bottling to comfortably fill the demand, so there's been a few left over. Right, this is down to anticipation. This is one of the jobs of the distillery, to anticipate demand. And frankly, when you've got a new brand coming of age, you really don't want to be discounting too much too soon. People pick up in these things. It's real life. There's also the Kilmorey version at 46%, which is the cheapest at £52 a bottle. This particular bottling is the most expensive. And in hindsight, too expensive. This is about £86 a bottle for 6-year-old single malt. That's too dear. So a word of encouragement to Lag Distillery: be very, very careful with your prices. Because although I'm enjoying this whisky and it's good whisky and I'm really looking forward to smelling it, tasting it and sharing it with you, see, due to the price of this, I doubt I'll be buying another bottle of Lag single malt for the next 4 years. Because the price isn't pitched correctly. It should be £10 cheaper than it is. Cheers. On the nose, creamy, soft caramel, vanilla and nutty peatiness. It's soft, it's not the salty, tangy peat that you get in Islay. This is a more rounded, a more resinous peat note. We're not getting a lot of iodine in here. There's a hint in the background, but this is a more woodsy style of peatiness. It's very inviting. It's delightful. The cask influence, the Palo Cortado cask, built up on top of some relatively active ex-bourbon casks which have helped give the sweeter, more vanilla notes, has been very successful and it's worked a treat. So we're off to a good start. And at that price, I would have to be off to a good start. There's some lovely, slightly herbaceous overnotes in the nose. Sage is prominent. So there's a touch of angelica as well, and a soft sort of green plum note as well. Something slightly tart and tangy. First taste, and this is taste at what, 56.2%. So we're still at full casks, basically full cask strength, or near enough. And oh, it's a nippy one. The nose suggests age. First taste in the palate, no. This suggests youthfulness. This absolutely needs a drop of water. Now where's my jug? And where's my soda spoon? I'm not going to give this a full 5 centilitres of water, which I usually do, a complete spoonful. I'm going to give it half. I'm going to give it 3 centilitres of water. Millilitres of water. I've just made a conversion in my head, and centilitres are That's a lot of water. This is millilitres. So just a wee drop of water, lovely viscosity. You can clearly see that it's authentically not been chill filtered, which is very reassuring and a good sign of a craft presented whisky. On the nose, immediately it becomes slightly fruitier, slightly more rounded. The nutty notes recede slightly. The slight sort of hint of sootiness within the peat softens, and you get more of a slight apricot note. So we're talking about Mediterranean orchard fruit styles, gentle plum, apricot. We're in that region. Despite its youthfulness, the longer you leave it in the glass, the better. It's a big conversation that's absolutely dominated by the spirit. This is one of the advantages of going for a young peated whisky as against a young unpeated whisky, is the intact phenolic composition. When you have a young, actively matured peated whisky, 5, 6, 7 years old, you tend to get more intensity of the phenolics and a wider range of the phenolic flavours because they've not been broken down by the oxidisation during maturation in the cask. And we've definitely got it here. Is there any more information off the label I'd like to add to you? Small label, small writing. I should get my steampunker out. But it kind of discloses useful information. Distilled using malted barley, heavily peated to 50 parts per million. Now, that's all very well, but the parts per million, where do you take the reading? Do you take the reading off the grain receipt from the maltings factory, or do you take it off the final distilled spirit? That tends not to get disclosed, and it makes a huge difference to the final result. And this basically, where's my steampunker? Steampunker, never be without one. Highly prized here we go. It's a highly prized ex-Palo Cortado cask. No. Don't give us our highly prized bollocks. Highly prized is just subjective marketing spin. If it comes to a Palo Cortado in any cask, it doesn't matter that it's highly prized. It matters that it's fresh and intact and hasn't been lying around too long and gone stale. That's what really matters. So it'd be far more useful to us if they, rather than saying a highly prized Palo Cortado cask, they said actually a fresh one that we got a few weeks after it had been emptied and it hadn't been lying around in Spain for about 4 or 5 months in the sunshine. Just a hint. One of the challenges for the Scotch whisky industry is that more and more of people who are still buying whisky know far more than they used to. And I think there's distilleries and professionals in the industry getting uncomfortable with this because they're now finding in conversations that people know too much about what makes good whisky and therefore understand why there are shortfalls and faults in whisky. They have an explanation, not just a little sense of disappointment. Distilleries really need to take note of this. It's a new reality. So, sherry casks from the Jerez region of Spain. Of course they're from Jerez, because that's the region of Spain that makes sherry. Period. So here we are, the hand palleted from limited edition. Oh, I'm not going to carry on anymore. It's getting a little bit too marketing speaky. A little bit too disingenuous actually. Excuse me. Just dropped my malt marks. I've added some water. Let's get back to the whiskey. It's ripening up in the glass. What do I mean by that? It means that with a drop of water, we're getting more of a range from the phenolics in the whiskey. And it's becoming slightly creamier. It's becoming a little fruitier, a little more spicy. It's getting a little bit more range of on the nose. And this kind of follows through on the palate as well. Tangy. Woodsy. Quite spicy, heavily spicy. Getting allspice. Cumin. Light dusting of cinnamon. Cardamom. Quite a natural complexity coming through from the cask engagement. Very nice. I'm going to add a drop more water now. I'm going to bring it down a little bit further. So this is it. We've got the full 5 millilitres of water in. I don't want to take it down too quickly because I want to get the kind of full range experience of the phenolics, because this is the first bottle of Lag I've bought. So essentially, it's just like if you buy a bottle of any single malt or blended Scotch for the first time, it becomes by default your point of reference. And also, because of that, it means if you ever buy another bottle of the same distillery product, your memory banks have got this previous connect which defines your point of reference in terms of the memory. And so the first contact with a whiskey, ideally you want it to be a good and a positive one. And that would explain why I was prepared. I'm not going to say I was comfortable with it. I was prepared to pay the premium and frankly overpay for this bottle of whiskey. So hopefully you'll be able to get a little bit cheaper than me, the way things are going with whiskey sales in 2026. If you do, leave a comment in the box below. Or even better, become a Patreon supporter and join the discussion in Discord. I'm going to wind up on this. This is an excellent single malt. It's not like other peated whiskies. It's more sort of tobacco box, armchairs. It's softer, it's creamier, but not too sweet. It's definitely not Islay peat. It doesn't have the strong iodine notes, the strong TCP notes that you get so obviously from Laphroaig. It's an intense, more spice wood style, incoming. Hiya, big boy. Come here. Come get about Cuddles. Cuddles. You been out and about, have you? This is where I get to find out if the barrel works, because it's got a smaller surface area. And is this big cuddly Tom going to knock the bottles right off the barrel? Is he? He's actually, in fairness to him, he's very good. He's very careful. Having said that, I'm probably tempting fate. Could you excuse me a little bit? I've got a bit of a tradition here. Right, you. Ooh. Yes. You cynical manipulator. Putty in your paws. Right, let's quickly get on with this review. Last smell, last taste, then a malt mark. There's a sort of walnut oil note in it. You can buy walnut oil in the supermarket as a salad dressing. It works really well. It's got a lovely flavour, but you've got to watch it goes rancid quite quickly. The sage, the herbaceousness, it's kind of more restrained now that I've added water. Big, full, aromatically phenolic. That's a good descriptor here. Aromatic. There's a cola note in there. Complex wood note. Understated integrated spices in with the peat. Lag is going to do very well as a brand. It absolutely equals, in terms of character and identity and signature, it equals anything that's being produced in Islay. My only residual concern though, which is going to put me off buying another bottle for quite a number of years now, is the price. I think they're charging a bit too much, a bit too soon. What marks? Don't you bother, don't you bother, you stay where you are. Oh you brat, you greedy sausage. There you are folks, 83 out of 100. Could you excuse me a minute? I do have a little modest crisis here in the bothy. Off, off, you've had your treats, don't push your luck. He's getting overconfident, that cat. 83 out of 100, a really good solid start for this brand. And this has been review 1115. However, I'm going to conclude just before I go into review 1115 extras, is why was I prepared to spend £87, because I've written it down just to give me, on this new young whisky when I could have got 10-year-old cask strength Laphroaig for that, or I could have got a bottle of 10-year-old Ardbeg. I could easily have got a delightful bottle of Port Charlotte. You deserve an answer, and the answer's simple: curiosity. I paid a big premium because I wanted to try this to get a point of reference, and you can't do that off a glass at a whisky festival or a glass in a pub. You need to actually have a bottle and spend time with it, and I've spent about 6 weeks with this, getting to know it, getting to connect with it. I've really enjoyed it, but as I mentioned, and I'm mentioning it again because it's really quite important, I could have got other better matured whiskies than this for a lot less. And what I'm thinking is independent bottlers of Caol Ila. There's so many good versions of them that's why when I said earlier in this video that I wouldn't be buying another bottle for 4 years, that's the reason. Lovely whisky, shame about the price. See you soon, bye bye.